And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. How are you doing today, Nora?
Very well. Spring has sprung. Changed my warm comforter for a lighter blanket because it's Sacramento and summer is here, and it's getting warm, which it will continue to do. How you doing, Brian?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's funny you say that because this week the temperature has gone up, 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 and it was so
Oh
warm outside. Didn't need my hoodie, walked outside. Today, however, I went to the bank this morning. It's 45 degrees outside, and I'm thinking, where's my coat? Luckily, I did have a hoodie on, but even that, I was thinking, oh my gosh, it is freezing. So, yeah, East Coast weather,
God, you
you
are
never know
so
what you're going to get.
well. DC, from what everybody tells me, is just especially variable. Like you guys are at this
Yes.
weird where the southern weather comes up and it gets warm, the northern weather comes down, and you're at that in between place.
Well,
45
they say,
degrees today. Holy moly!
yeah, they
Yeah.
say because DC is in between two bodies of water, it's
Oh
sort of
yeah.
that has a lot to do with it. So there's almost this bubble that there can be this massive snowstorm and it'll just go above us or just below us. We get hit
Okay. It's like
occasionally, but we don't
fish.
get hit a ton.
Uh-huh.
And it can be warm, it can be cold, it can be all over the place. So, we never know until we walk outside. I walk out at 4:30 in the morning. I'm like, oh, it's going to be one of those days. Got it. Okay. I need my coat. Go back and get it.
Right.
So, but you had
Lordy.
a little bit of that. You were here last weekend and it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
beautiful.
It was
It was
gorgeous.
gorgeous. I
No,
mean,
it was
yeah,
perfect weather.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And what we were doing, I'll give everybody a little clue of what we were
Mhm.
doing. Nora was in town. We were shooting some videos for our online program. And what we were talking about was assessments. And I
Yep.
thought, you know what, since that's fresh on our mind and we haven't covered that topic yet, and I mean, you do the same thing I do whenever I teach. I ask people how many of you do assessments on people, and I'm always surprised at how the hands don't always go up. I expect to see every hand raised. And what do I see? 50%,
Maybe.
sometimes maybe, sometimes
Maybe.
less. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
okay, well, we need to change this now. So I thought good opportunity for us to dive into why assessments are important. And if you're just a fitness, enthusiast who is listening to this, you'll understand sort of the methodology of what we're looking for in assessments and also how important assessments are, even in doing it yourself, seeing how your body works, or if you're going to work with a trainer or a Pilates instructor, you kind of want to make sure that they are doing an assessment on you so that they have an idea of what's going on.
Which gets us exactly to the point of an assessment.
Yep.
A good friend of mine and several people say, if you're not assessing, you're guessing.
I love that.
Right? Which is kind of true. So an assessment is really just an evaluation. Like, can they rotate to the right? Do they rotate more to the right than to the left? What is the range of motion in their hips? Can they bring their hips above 90, their leg above 90 degrees, for example? Like those are just simple things that let us know the state of your physical body, right? What
Yep.
state your body is, and gives us some clues about things that are working well and things that maybe we need to work on.
Exactly. Exactly. I always say it's your roadmap,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and what I tell a lot of people is, clients come in all the time and they'll say, why do we have to waste a whole hour on this? They want to just get in and exercise. And I get that. I totally understand that. I said, well, if I don't do an assessment, I'm basically programming your workout like I'm blindfolded throwing a dart at a dartboard after being spun around 10 times.
I love it.
I
Yeah.
might hit the target. I
Yeah.
probably won't. And it's
Yep.
going to take me a heck of a lot longer. So to me, this is my roadmap. And there's 1,001 ways to get to my goal.
There
But that
are.
assessment gives me an idea of, okay, here's the map. Here are 5 different options I have to get me to wherever I'm driving to on this map. And now I get to pick a path and see if that one works. And if it doesn't, then we can reassess and pick another path. But it gives me that first initial goal setting.
It gives you a baseline, right? It
Yeah.
gives you a baseline, and this is what I do. Every movement professional, whether anybody who's doing anything remotely kind of private or really working to make change, you got to get a baseline. You've got to know
Mhm.
something about your client, whether it's assessing them for a particular injury, like say they've got a low back injury, do they prefer this position or this position? What position gives them more relief? What position causes pain? What activities are easier and harder for them? What movements are easier and harder for them, right? Just like some baseline things, which number one, tell you where they are. Number
Mhm.
two, tell you where they maybe need to improve, right? If there's something that they need to be able to sit longer, for example, or something, then we need to work on that. Again, it gives you that first picture. And then from that picture, that's when you can make a plan, right? Without an assessment, without an idea of what's happening, to your point, like it's almost like the road that's almost like this is my starting position. But for me, the assessment is not just the roadmap, it's the where am I trying to get to?
Mhm.
Also, so it's the map, but it's also like even just laying out the goals so that I
Mhm.
can build the map to where I want to go.
Well, I think that's something we should talk about is the assessment process.
Uh-huh.
It's not just looking at the body or having them do certain exercises and things. I consider the entire assessment process, everything from when that client first walks in, sits down, what we talk about, goal setting, everything.
Yeah.
So, let's go over that aspect
Yep.
because as movement professionals, we are assessing constantly, and we
Yes.
should be. We watch them
Yes.
walk, we watch them move.
Yep.
Today I just had a client leave here who, she wasn't moving quite right in her shoulder. And sure enough, she slept funny or something, and her trapezius was a little overactive. Okay. But it was something that I noticed. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
Don't know why. And I don't need to necessarily know why. I just need to say something's going on
Yep.
and maybe either avoid it or work it depending on what's going on with it. But
Yep.
when they come in for the first session, I always like to start with a medical history personally,
Yeah.
because a lot of the
Yep.
people that
Yep.
you and I deal with have issues.
Yep.
So I have them walk in and I'm watching them walk. How do they sit down in front of me?
Yep.
When they sit in their chair, can they navigate around? I've got a small office right now. So can they navigate around to get into the chair? Can they sit down without using their arms? Just watching their body move in space.
Yep. How do they I mean, we often talk about assessment being certainly for you and I kind of a full-time job.
Mhm.
That every session is I'm assessing all the time. I mean,
Yep.
really. But again, that initial thing is how do they come in? Do they come in looking comfortable? Do they come in looking uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Right? Do they move easily? Do they take off their shoes easily? Do they put their purse down easily? Or is there something a hitch in their get along? Right? Is there something
Yep.
that looks like not quite working? And to your point, like how do they sit down? To me too, how do they like if I'm having them fill out paperwork, which I usually do? How do they
Right.
sit? Do they come
Or
up
do they
cross
sit?
one? Right. Do they stand with a clipboard and fill it out? Or do they
Yep.
sit, cross one leg over one way and then rotate the other way to write? Right?
Yep.
Because these are going to be things I'm just going to notice in terms of how they
Yep.
do that.
Absolutely.
And it's just what we do, honestly, for better and for worse. And then once we've gotten that, then it's like, okay, now tell me about yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. One of the things we talked about in the video that I use the opportunity for a couple of things. First of all, I want the information.
Yeah.
So, what's going on with their body, and what is their story? You and I have talked a lot about that in the past, because for a lot of people, seen many doctors, they've seen chiropractors, they've seen physical therapists or whoever. By the time they get to us, and most of the time they haven't been heard.
Right. Yeah.
People,
Yeah.
how many
Yeah.
doctors, you're a quarter of the way through what you have to tell them, and you can see they've checked out and already diagnosed you and are just waiting for you to stop talking before they
Yep.
can say, "Here, do this."
Take this. Yep.
So, yeah. So, I wanna be an active listener. I wanna really make sure that they know that I'm hearing them because I may be the first person to actually actively listen,
Yep.
you know? What they're telling me is going to be a huge part of what I'm going to see later, usually, not always, but usually,
Yep.
you know? Like you said, are they guarded? What's going on with them? Do they have a limp, etcetera? Something that we're gonna say, "Oh, yeah, I watched her walk in and, like, something didn't look quite right." "Oh,
Mhm.
okay," and I can just jot some things down, you know, and I like to go over everything. Uh, the other thing that I tell people, and this for my fitness professionals out there, when we heal, when our body heals, we have a tendency to forget. It's
Mhm.
our body's way
Yes,
of not holding on to things,
absolutely.
and hopefully that's what happens. So, I can't tell you the number of times when a client will come in and they'll say, "Oh, by the way, yeah, I totally forgot to tell you. I've had, disc fusion." I'm like, "I've been working with you for 3 years. I didn't know this?" "What?" And, the classic example, I had a guy coming in, he was probably here with us 6 months, and the weather had suddenly changed. He came in the summer, it was winter, the weather suddenly changed, it got really cold, and he came in, he had a little limp, he came to us for a low back issue, and he had a little limp going on. I said, "Hey, what's going on?" He goes, when the weather changes like this, you know, my hip, it starts bothering me." I said, "Your hip, what's going on?" He said, "Oh, you know where it was replaced?" Never said anything about a hip replacement. So it's like, "Oh, okay, let me jot that down."
Mhm. Good to
So I give
know.
Yes, and I give them permission. I say, "Look, you're gonna forget things, we all do. Sprained your ankle, you did this, you did that, when you remember, let me know."
Right, exactly.
And you know what? When I saw that, I was like, "That makes so much sense." It was just like, "Yeah, okay, this makes sense now. Why did I
Yeah.
see this pattern?" Uh, so give them permission, but go through all of their medical history as much as they can remember, is what I
Yeah.
do,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
try and figure out, "Okay, this is a good starting point for me."
One thing we often, one of the things we do in our movement principle stuff is we use the analogy of the body detective.
Mhm.
Right. So really, from the moment somebody comes in, how they move, what they say, you're looking for clues. You're looking for clues to how they move now, how they want to move, what their challenges are, what their strengths are, what their goals are. Like I'm just kind of trying to pull all that out
Yep.
in every interaction. Really, it's like, what do you do? How are you doing it? What's working? What's not working? And all those conversations, all those interactions, all those observations help to give me more clues.
Mhm.
Because the other thing too, to your point, Brian, that people forget things a lot. People also, I find, they have no idea for the most part what their body's doing or not doing.
Absolutely.
Right. So I mean, I think of one client that I had for a while who had like a very obvious limp, and every time I kind of asked her about it, she'd go like, "Huh? Like I don't have a limp. Like you know, like actually you do." And it took like with you, it took a while for her to go, "Oh, well, when I was a teenager, I fractured my
Yeah.
femur." And that femur didn't grow back quite at the same length as the other one. So there's a leg length difference. And she was immobilized for kind of an extended period of time during a fairly critical
Mm.
growth period, which led to this limp. But she had gotten this limp so long ago because she was like 14 or something when this happened, that it just, it was just part of how she moved. She didn't think about it. It didn't bother her. She didn't have any pain. It was just a thing.
Yep.
So that is that you're going to see things that they don't know are happening, and you're going to try to bring
Mhm.
up things that they don't know are happening. And sometimes, like there's the assessment for us so that we know what's happening, we have a sense of it. There's also the assessment for them.
Yes.
Right. So it's also bringing their awareness to things that maybe they can do a little differently. Maybe it's how they sit. Maybe you don't want to always cross that right leg over the left leg all day when you're doing, when you're a therapist, an example you've used before.
Yep.
Um, so it's like one of those things too. It's like you're also drawing their attention to things that maybe they're unaware of that they could be dealing with on their own.
Now, the one thing I'm going to say as a addition to that, and I see this all the time, which is why I'm bringing this up in the fitness setting. There's a lot of people who they use the assessment that they do, if they do an assessment at all,
Mm.
to as a sales technique.
Yeah.
And their job is to point out everything wrong,
Right.
everything
So
negative.
and that they're going to fix it for you.
Right, right.
Right.
And and I do point things out, but I
Mhm.
never wanna make them wrong
Mhm.
because when people come to see us, they're already intimidated, they're in an environment that they know nothing about.
Yeah, you're new, all
Yeah,
that.
I had a friend who, when I first worked with him, in a fitness setting, you could see he was master of his game in his world, but now he was in mine and he was very uncomfortable. And I could
Yeah.
see it. So just that little bit makes people uncomfortable, but we're very comfortable. And now if you're pointing things out to them saying, "Oh, da 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 da," all these wrong things, it can really be intimidating.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
I try and just make it not I don't wanna make an issue of it.
No,
So,
exactly.
just, "Oh, here's what I noticed. You see this, this? Ah, we'll take care of that." Make
Exactly.
it almost like a throwaway. Don't even worry about it. We'll take care of that.
Exactly. Huh. Seems like there's a little difference, in your gait. Let's see what we can do about that.
Exactly.
A classic example from, one teacher I was working with was she was working with a client, older client who had scoliosis and had a fairly substantial, I mean, it was a probably a moderate to, moderate scoliosis. So when she did a roll forward, there was a really big rib hump is what they call it on one side, right? Where the ribs
Mhm.
push out because of scoliosis. And and this teacher, very just without really thinking about it, so you have kind of a big rib hump on that right side. And this was a client who presumably never heard this, or maybe didn't even know she had scoliosis. I'm not sure what the situation was. She was so offended. Like
Mm.
this client never came back. This client was so offended by the fact that she called out the fact that she had a rib hump that she never came back.
It's like she
Right. So
called her
there's
Quasimodo or something.
yeah, exactly. Like she pointed out that she was deformed and that was just
Yeah.
unacceptable. And I get that. And Julie didn't do it because I was, in the room with her. She didn't do it in a way that was offensive. And she would assume that this woman has got to be in her 50s, that she may have heard that before since she clearly
Right.
had scoliosis for a really long time. Um, so it's those moments of just like, oh, I noticed something's a little funny here. Let's see what we can do about it. And the other thing too, though, I mean, to switch that around is yes, it's used as a sales tool to tell you like everything's wrong and I'm going to
Mhm.
fix you. So you have to come to me forever till all these things are fixed because they're broken, right? And that's often the subtext.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's a negative subtext for sure. On the other hand, there's also that piece of educating your client about what's
Yeah.
happening in their body. Because sometimes having a client understand what's happening can make all the difference in terms of their anxiety, in terms of even their pain levels. I've had
Mhm.
more than one client where when I just explain what's happening, let's say they've got, patellofemoral dysfunction, and I explain what that means in terms of the kneecap and how the femur works and all that, and the muscular imbalances are like, oh, that's what it is? It's like, yeah. And so that just means we need to strengthen here and release this a little bit and work on your alignment. Like,
Mhm.
oh, so it gave them some education and it gave them a path towards a solution,
Sure.
right? Which is a positive side of it of education.
And that's the difference, the positive versus the negative.
Yeah.
We really want to make them feel good after
Mhm.
they leave us, and
Yes.
not, "Woe is me. I'm horrible.
I'm
I've
busted.
I'm busted. I've
Mhm.
done nothing but damage my body these last 20 years or
Right.
50 years," whatever it is. You wanna give them hope.
Yeah.
Classic example I give, a lot of my students. I had a woman coming into me. She was a very, very large woman, okay, very stout. You would think German, 5'11", probably 350 pounds. A brilliant, brilliant woman, master of her game and in life. She came to me and she had printed out all of her medical history
Mm.
and single space 12 font front and back of a side of sheet of paper. And I looked at it and I use this. She's actually told me I'm allowed to use this in my classes because I'll put it up on the board. And I can always tell how fast people are reading because they get to a certain line in 1979 when she was in an elevator crash.
Oh.
And she was on one side of the elevator, and the shaft, mechanism that should stop at the bottom came up through the floor and shattered one side of her body.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
And she's had nothing but pain and issues and things ever since. She said, "What's funny is
Probably
there's
enough.
someone on the other side of her that had the right side of the body have the exact same problem."
Jeez. Jeez.
And when she was leaving, she just said, "So is there any hope?"
Oh.
And I just said, "Of course. We got this. No problem." And I outlined, we're gonna do this, this, and this, but yeah, of course there is. She started crying. No one had ever told her that she could be quote unquote normal again. So she was just crying like you wouldn't believe, and you know, let her have her
Let her do
moment.
it. Yeah.
And she just said, "No one's ever said I can get better."
Oof.
And it took us a little while, but she was totally functional and
Nice.
happy and moving,
Nice.
and you'd never know anything was wrong. But it just took a little bit of time. So working on the
Wow.
positive, that yes, I could have pointed every single thing out to her. Most of our clients, when they come to us for the first time, they know they got issues. They don't need to be scolded. You have bad posture. They kind of know it. So I might say, yeah, your shoulders are rounded a little bit. I call it lawyer syndrome. A lot of lawyers in BC.
Yes.
So I'll say, you got lawyer syndrome, your head's forward, you're rounded shouldered and things, we'll work on some postural stuff. Again, make it like a throwaway, like, don't worry about that. We got this. They already know they have some of that. So
I
if I
was
can
just,
make that positive, it works better. Yeah.
absolutely. I love that story. I was just, I'm working on a course, and one of the elements of the course is, I was working with 2 experts in, spinal cord injury rehabilitation using Pilates and movement. And, it was really inspiring. I'm reviewing those videos now just to review those, because I mean, you think about a serious injury that they're often, said, "Yeah, this is as good as you're gonna get," or you come out of surgery, you had an accident, you come out of surgery, and they go, "Oh, by the way, you're severed here and there, and you'll most likely never walk again," right? Things like that that are said,
Yep.
by medical professionals all the time. And I use this analogy, I call it like, it's almost like the curse of the wicked stepmother from a fairy tale.
Yep.
Like, so many clients come in who have heard something like that from their doctor. You'll never this. This is as good as it's going to get. Like, there is no more hope for you.
Right.
And man, number one, the body is a seriously changeable organ. Like, period. Right? The body does nothing but change. I mean, our cells turn over every 7 years, and we can create change. Um, and this was really a reminder of that, just to watch the spinal cord injury thing, because they often say, like, after 2 years you're kind of done in terms of rehab. And
Right.
these people that I know that are working with it, it's like they've made so much progress after that, just by being creative and by not believing that they're done.
Hmm.
So much of it really is exactly that. It's having hope, having belief. And I often find, as a Pilates teacher, that's half the time that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, somebody comes in and says, "This happened, and I'm doomed. I have arthritis." I'm like, "Well, so do I." Like, whatever. It's like, that doesn't actually mean that much. Um, and and
Yep.
and a lot of it is, "Well, do you think I'll ever do this again?" I said, "Maybe." I said, "Let's see." I'm always
Exactly.
always leaving the door open for improvement and change. Always. I don't
Yep.
care what is happening, because I don't know.
Nope.
And it may be mine to do, it may be somebody else's to do. Like, I may need to refer them to somebody else who will make the change.
Yep.
But I don't know. That bodies are amazing. They can do incredible things. So
How,
anyway,
how many times have we heard of an athlete being told you'll never play again?
yeah,
And then a year later, they're on the field in a highly competitive, like highly impact related, field like football or something.
yeah, yeah,
The body the body has a resiliency to it.
yep,
And when put in, to me, the proper path for
hmm,
healing,
yep,
it can heal to a certain degree. Not
yep.
everybody the same way, but I will say this, and I tell this to my clients, and I'll say it during the assessment: what you put into it is what you get out of it.
That's true too. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
How bad
yeah.
do you want it? Because if you want me to solve all of your problems and expect that, that's not going to work. You got to work for it, because that's a big part of this. You have to do the work. I say it all the time to my clients when they thank me. It's like, look, I just pointed you in the right direction and kicked your butt. You
Exactly.
did the
That's what I
work.
say. That's what I say too. I say, I led you down the path, but you walked it. Like,
Yeah.
I told you where to go, but you took it on. Because exactly, and that's the change that needs to be made for them.
Hmm.
And that's part of that assessment process, is helping to identify what you guys are working on together and how you're going to move forward, and that there is a path, and that you're going to get somewhere.
Yep. Yep. Let's talk about what goes on in an assessment, because I sort of have it broken down into two segments that I think
Yep.
about: a
Okay.
static and a dynamic.
Okay. Yep. Me too.
Okay. Because for me, my static is I'm going to look at posture. I'm going to see how their
Standing.
body stands.
Yep.
Look, is one, and I'm looking, I learned this a long time ago from one of my mentors: the rule of 15 or the rule of 10. 10 seconds, 10 feet away, or 15 seconds, 15 feet away. If you stare at something too long, you can see things that maybe aren't there. You can almost wish them to be there.
Or there today,
Right. Or
right?
there
Like
today.
they're just something funky happening today that isn't really a thing you need to do something about.
Exactly. So, I look from behind. I don't like to look from the front because they feel like they're really being, oh my gosh, someone's watching me. So I'll say, face that way for me. And I'll look like I'm just glancing on my clipboard while they're relaxed and just start glancing. And in 5 to 10 seconds, I can see what I need to see, you know?
Yep.
And you're looking for this. You're looking for a shoulder being too high. You're looking for a head cocked to the side. You're
Or
looking for them
kyphosis or,
kyphosis.
yeah, something obvious, something like that
Exactly.
sticks out at you.
Exactly. I mean, it's a old George Carlin line, but you want to see the thing that you could see from across the street. You want to be able to be, oh wow, yeah, boom, it stands out at you. That's what I'm looking for generally. If their right shoulder is half an inch higher than their left, so what? It may be that way this morning. It may be because they walked with a backpack for 10 years on
And
one
that's
shoulder.
normal. I mean,
Maybe,
that's
and
just normal too. A lot
that's
of clients
normal.
just have that. Yeah.
The side that they have their purse on, or the side that they carry their child for many, many years, and they've developed a little bit of muscular imbalance from that. Totally normal, but if one is significantly higher and it leads to a curvature of the spine and their head is now cocked because they want to have their eyes aligned with, the writing reflex, their eyes aligned with the horizon. Okay, that's something else, because now there's something with their alignment that I'm going to have to work with to try and, I hate to use the word, but correct, put them on the right path so that they can get that or reverse that a little bit, if not altogether.
The thing about that static alignment, or static assessment is, a lot of that is going to happen without them knowing I'm assessing them. Because
Oh
that's the
yeah.
other thing is as soon as they know they're being watched, and this is especially true if you're teaching teachers, which I do a lot of. Like
Oh
as
yeah.
soon as they know they're being assessed, the feet come together, the legs are parallel, the abdominals are tucked in, like everything is corrected. And that's not really what you want to see. You kind of want to see what they do when they're not thinking. So,
Yep.
again, watching when they come in, watching when they're just standing there, and you're talking like I do my friend assessment when I'm just talking to them, right?
Yeah.
Because we're having a conversation, we're face to face, and I'm just noting. My brain is going, "Where's their shoulders? Where's their ribs? Where's their?" Well, we're talking,
Yep.
so
Yep.
so make that as subtle as possible in a way, or as sneaky as possible if you want to think about it that way.
Yep. The other thing that
Yeah.
I've done sometimes, they just have them march in place.
Uh-huh.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
march for 5, 10 seconds and then stop. And just wherever you stop, just stop. Freeze. Playing
Yeah.
freeze tag. Freeze.
Yeah.
And then again, 5 to 10 seconds. You don't need a whole lot. And you do the same thing sideways. I like to look from back. I like to look sideways. Uh, I like if they're right hand dominant, I'll look at them primarily from their right side. If they're left hand dominant, I'll
Mm.
do their left side, because that's the side they write with. If they're going to have a rotation to the body, chances are they're going to rotate, toward that side, or technically, yeah, toward the right side, so that because they're writing on a desk, they're going to be twisted toward it.
Mhm.
And
And their arm will be, yeah.
exactly. So, or if they're mousing a lot, whatever. So a lot of times I'll do that side and just face the mirror, the windows or whatever, and I'll do it really quick, and then I'll show them what I saw. But again, I make it like it's not that big a deal. I'll say, yeah,
Yeah.
you got lawyer syndrome. You got, your head and shoulders are a little rounded forward. Okay, we'll take care of some of that. You may have a sway back. Or, from behind, I noticed you had a little lateral lean where your shoulders are sitting a little off to the hips. Your hips are on one angle and your shoulders are to the left a little bit, and they go, oh, I didn't even notice that. And I can't tell you how many of my attorneys, though, have said, maybe that's why my suits have to be all tailored a certain way. Like,
I love that.
maybe. And it's
Maybe.
true. And
Yeah.
I've had a number of them come in later and say, man, I have to have them all adjusted because they don't fit right. The jackets just don't quite fit right anymore. I'm like, well, I'm not going to take that as a negative. I'm going
That's
to take that as a
right. In
positive.
my world, that's a good thing. That means you've changed enough to have new suits, or at least have them
Exactly.
tailored. I love it.
Exactly. And I use you can find these uh, postural alignment charts all over the internet.
Mhm.
Readco is the one that I pull up because you can type it into your Google search, Readco posture chart. It'll pop up. PDF. I use that because it's very simple and it's something that you can literally just circle. Are they straight? Are they slightly tilted? Are they really tilted? And yeah,
arrows to indicate like,
arrows,
yeah,
bingo.
kyphosis this way, shoulder that way, little lines. Yeah, whatever shorthand works for you, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They don't have to all be the same. For me, it's just I
No.
found it, it worked. I keep them in my file, and it's something that I can just draw on really quickly and look at again later for a reassessment.
Mhm. And if you're like some of us are, if you have a really, really good memory, when I was starting out at 27 as a trainer, I could remember absolutely everything about every single one of my clients.
Yep.
No problem. Like I was seeing 30 to 40 clients a week, and I knew I knew everything that was going on with every one of them in my head. So they would come in and I would know like it's their right hip, it's their left knee, it's whatever it was.
Mhm.
Not so much anymore. Right then I
Yeah.
realized like my memory got a little fuzzier. So that's the other thing that about the assessment and making just notes on a chart like that is what side was their hip up on, or where was that curve if it was a scoliosis. Like sometimes, especially for the first week or so, once I've seen them a few times, I get it, but that first time or two I've got to like make notes to make sure it sticks in my head. Yeah, so
Absolutely.
it's for
There's no
me. Yeah.
question. Yeah. And I think it's just I go back to that too because I was the same way. I used to know every single client, every problem, all the
Yeah.
everything. And I've seen so many clients over my career,
Yes.
and especially if I've only seen him a couple of times, I'm thinking about this
Yeah.
one client who has been gone a month. I only saw her twice before she left. When she comes back in, I'm not gonna remember a darn thing about her. If I remember her face, I'm gonna be lucky because I'm gonna see so many people in between. So I
Exactly.
see her on the schedule and I'm gonna have to refresh my memory of
Yep.
why is she here? What's going on? What were the issues? Okay, and having that all documented makes a world of difference.
Also means if you've got 5 minutes between clients or even a minute or two, you can like take, I mean, if you can take a quick glance visually and go, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Right now I remember. It's like, oh, okay, got it. Right. So
Yep.
it's for me, it's a very quick memory game of like, oh, right now I remember the issues we're working on and I could go from there.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say one other thing that goes on to that. I will often take their folder, their file folder, and if they have something big, if they
Mm,
have something big like spondylolisthesis, a disc herniation, something that they need to be watched for because or cardiac or whatever, I will write in a big Sharpie on the outside. So as
mhm.
soon as I pick up that file, it is right there in my face and it says whatever it is. And that way I'm like, okay, they need to be in this kind of posture. Okay, okay, I need to watch them a little closer on this. So in case it's not forefront of my mind, it'll always be staring me in the face when I first look at
Nice.
that chart.
Yep.
It's just an
Yep.
easy way to freshen that up. And
Yep.
again, why not do it?
Yeah. Quick reminder. Or
Yep.
somebody who's just a little bit post surgery. Like I worked with a lot of ACL repairs and that kind of thing, and
Mhm.
because of where I was, we'd often would see them pretty early in their process. So, I mean, for me, it would be like ACL repair, April 2022 or whatever it was, so
Yep.
that I knew how long ago it was. I knew kind of what the timeline was that we're working on.
Sure.
Yeah, because that's also really important in terms of just what phase they are in their rehabilitation.
Yep.
So, going on to dynamic assessments.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Dynamic assessments is watching their body move. I'm gonna be
Yep.
looking for everything from does it move freely? Can they
Mhm.
move?
What's the range of
Uh,
motion?
what's the range of motion? I had one gentleman who
Mhm.
came in who's in his early 70s who looks in great shape. You know, he moved the way he walks, everything's fine. But I had him lie down and do a simple march. And as soon as he brought his left knee in, it went half the distance of his right knee. And he
Oh,
said, oh, it kills me every time I lift my knee. I wouldn't see that in walking. But as
nope.
soon as he was lying down, I was like, "Oh, okay." And I tried to even gently, passively move it into that range of motion, and he was so guarded. I was like, "All right, something's going on there."
Yep.
Okay. And he passed all the tests that would tell me if it was bony. It wasn't bony. It's definitely muscular. So it's like, okay, we're going to have to work with that now. But it was something that I would never have been able to see unless I had him move.
And move in kind of some specific ways. So
Right.
one of the things that Brian and I've been working on as our kind of one of our many side projects is just working out fairly simple assessments. And a lot of times, I mean, I call these assessor sizes, many of them, because they're both exercises and assessments.
Mhm.
Like sometimes you're just doing an assessment, like bringing the knee into the chest and just seeing how far it can go, right? That's, you're not necessarily going to do that as an exercise. You might do a knees to chest as just a back relief, but that's not going to be an exercise I'm going to teach, but something I need to know. Or sometimes a mobility test. I've got to see like how far does that shoulder go? But a lot of the things are exercises. So, doing a
Mhm.
curl, doing a bridge, doing cat and cow, doing a side bend, right? All those just things that also could become an exercise are an opportunity for me to see how do they move? Do they move the same on the right side? Are they asymmetrical? What's going on? And I really am very, very fond of the assessor sizes because, to your point, your client thinks they're getting a workout, even if it's a
Mhm.
pretty simple workout. And that often makes them less antsy about that initial assessment day.
Yeah. And what I love about exercises is a lot of them are exercises that we're going to be using in our
Mm.
workouts, whether it be marching, whether it be toe touches, whether it be, side bend, whatever it is. And it's a great way that we can constantly continue to reassess down the road.
Mhm.
And that's what's
Yeah.
great about that. Whereas a lot of times when in my field, we'll do some medical exercise or medical muscle testing as well.
Mhm.
Well, those are very specific testing, parameters. They're not exercises. They're very specific for what I need to see. So so they'll know if they're being reassessed because I'll take them through some of those. But with the others, like opposite arm and leg raise from all fours, that's a fantastic exercise. And
Exactly.
it tells me so much at the same
Yep.
time, so I can continually reassess them each and every time as they get stronger and as they get better.
And then start to progress it.
Yes,
Right. I mean, they can start to add unstable surfaces or add resistance or, play with different vectors and things. Exactly. So that's really those are my ideal exercises. But like you, I
mhm,
have several that are like an anterior drawer test for ACL
right.
stuff, right? Like what is
Yep,
the mobility of that? Oh, it's too strong. Okay, I've got to work on that. So
exactly, exactly, and I think everybody can create their own
mhm.
exercises. You and I know what works best, and in the video we just shot hello.
Well,
And in the video that we just shot, we went over some that I'd consider some of the basics.
mhm.
Uh, something like marching, you know, knee drop to the side, heel slides,
Bridging,
bridging,
all
you know,
opposite arm and leg reach or bird dog.
right.
Yeah.
Bird dog, tail wag. These are
Yeah.
all some of the basics that are fantastic because they teach us so much, but they're also things that we're going to do on a regular basis. And what I'm looking for is I want to see for most of the joints, do they have a full range of motion?
Mhm.
Generally,
Mhm.
is there a hitch in their giddy up somewhere? Is something
Mhm.
not working properly? Can they laterally flex? Can they forward flex? Can they extend their spine?
Mhm.
Can it when they lift an arm, can they come all the way into full extension or flexion or abduction, adduction? Those are the sort of things I want to see their body just move.
And secondarily, so range of motion, right? Can they move through the ranges of motion that are necessary? Secondarily, um, is there stability? Is there appropriate
Mm,
stability? So does their pelvis wiggle a lot? Do their shoulders wiggle a lot? Can they support themselves one way or
yep.
the other? So looking at mobility, looking at stability are two key things. Looking at coordination then is kind of like my
Mhm.
third thing that I look at is
Yes.
when they lift one leg, or does their head move with their spine, or does it not? Are they able to integrate motion? Let's say they're doing a rotation. Does it just happen in the torso? Does it just happen in the hips, or does it happen through the whole body? Or looking
Yeah.
at how things are integrating as well.
Yeah. What's interesting is I find that for some people, that is the most difficult part. And they'll be the first to tell you, I can't dance. Don't give me
Right.
choreography. I can't dance.
Right.
And it's like, well, I'm not really asking you to dance, but you ask them to do
No.
opposite arm and leg raise. And the first thing they do is try and raise it on both sides and they fall down. And you're like, well,
Right. Right.
I really wanted opposite, but, and they go, oh, that wasn't. Oh, or they do
Yeah.
get bug and they can't for
Yeah.
the life of them do it. So they
Right.
sort of lack that
Right.
coordination, that patterning.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
tells me something too about them.
Absolutely. Both about their mind-body connection, which will be useful
Yes.
when you train them, and about just, their ability to bring movement together in their body and to organize it in a way that more efficient versus less efficient.
Hmm. Well, I
Yeah.
think we've all had body dyslexics.
Yeah.
People whose they just they don't their brain and their body have not been in communication for years.
Mhm.
They lived apart for a very long time, and now we have to bring them together, and it's a challenge.
They have to get
It's
to
a
know
real
each other.
challenge. Yes, yes. Body meet brain, brain meet body. Okay. And it can be a big challenge trying to get them to do certain activities. And the thing that you're going to note and that I see a lot of times is that a simple exercise, squats, step ups, today they'll do it perfectly. Tomorrow, that looks weird. Or
Mhm.
and you're just thinking it's the same thing. We've done it for 3 weeks now, but each time is a little bit different. And it's almost as though they don't have the memory, the recall of doing it
Yeah.
properly last time.
Yeah, every day is a new day.
Yeah, so making them
Mhm.
conscious and consciously aware of their own body can be huge. And I find these are the people that spend a lot of time in their head. These are
Yeah.
my intellectuals.
My tech people, my academics, my therapists.
Yes, they spend
Yeah.
all their time in their head
Mhm.
and they're not in touch with their own bodies.
Mm-mm.
Whereas you give me a former athlete or someone who, and even if they are brilliant, they know what to
Right.
do. Their
They
body just
right.
responds.
And they can remember stuff, and they can remember the sensation, and they can kind of build a pathway towards where they wanna go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that mind-body connection piece. I'm thinking one one client I work with, quite a bit who is an older guy, older gentleman, and, does a lot of cycling, and, the integration between his body parts is just fascinating. I mean, he's been doing
Hmm.
Pilates forever, he's done a lot of things, but if I ask him to, let's say, lift the right arm and the left leg like a dead bug at the same time, they will never time it. He'll never time it accurately. Like, the arm will come up, and then the leg will come up, and then the leg will come down, and the arm and, like, there's always a disconnect between his upper and lower body.
Mhm.
And we get better at it. And I'll try to almost give them a rhythm, like, okay, and like up and down to just try to get things to time and to
Sure.
be accurate that way. But it's work. Like, it's work for him. Things do not naturally
Mhm.
integrate in actually a fairly integrated logical fashion.
Yeah. And these are also things to just jot down when you see them happen, because it's good for you to know, but not only that, I don't know how many people out there are working with, in a facility with multiple trainers, multiple
Mm.
Pilates instructors,
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but if you need to pass someone off, these are things that whoever you're passing them to need to know, whether you're going out of town for 2 weeks and someone's gonna fill in, or in my facility, I do all the assessments, or the
Mm.
majority of them, because I want to have contact with everybody who walks in the door, first of all. But secondly, my eyes are pretty well trained at this point in my career. So I want to see what I could see. And also so that I can consult with my staff if they need to. I'll know the client and know their history and their backstory. But the more notes I write, the better they are, because they can look at it and say, oh, okay. Oh, got it. I see. Coordination may be an issue, or balance is a huge issue. Oh, okay. They have a Trendelenburg on the right, but not the left. Whatever it is, we just jot these things down that we see, but it gives them that opportunity that they can sort of mark before they even meet the client. Okay. So I got to just be aware of this, just that this was seen. So I find that that works really well for us.
Well, you and I have both worked in medical settings. I worked at a
Yeah.
hospital for a long time, and you've worked as a medical exercise specialist. And my my attachment to soap notes, as annoying as they are, because in the hospital it was always, subjective, objective assessment and plan was kind of like we had to write those in every client for every session. And so, you get done with your day, and then it's like, oh, the stack of charts were there, and you had to make all your notes. But it's invaluable. It's invaluable
Yeah.
both for, well, it's invaluable in all ways. It's invaluable for me to remember what I did and to make any notes about something I noticed in that session that I may want to work on in the future, because I may not
Hmm.
remember it, especially if they're going on vacation. I may not remember that in 3 weeks. It's invaluable for sharing clients, and
Yep.
it's invaluable for documenting progress, both for them and for you,
Yep.
which gets us to the idea of reassessing. right?
Mhm.
One of the things that we talk about is you do an assessment, initial assessment, then you work for a while. But did you actually is what you're doing working?
Right.
And that's something that a lot of I find a lot of instructors either don't really want to know, right? They're kind of like, well, it seems to be good. I seem to be working. Like there's an honesty and there's an integrity when you do a reassessment and go, oh, I'm really missing the mark here.
Mhm.
Like I did not make the difference I wanted to make there, and that's not changing. Or wow, I didn't realize they'd gotten this much better on this thing.
Right.
So either way, it's really important to do the reassessments.
Mhm.
One thing that was very eye-opening to me was, and I've told this story before, but I had a client who I'd had for like 8 years, right? 2 or 3 times a week on the reformer, full Pilates studio, looking great, looking great. She'd made huge progress. We got a Coraline into the studio, our very first Coraline. And I was like, oh, let's come over to the Coraline. And she hopped on and she started doing some basic moves that were gait oriented. And it was like, oh, all of the problems that she had in terms of there's a limitation in hip mobility and other things showed up when she went into gait.
Mhm.
Even though I'd been working with her twice a week for 8 years, I had not solved that critical fundamental problem
Mhm.
because I hadn't ever tested that particular thing. Right. And I
Yeah.
mean, the good news was because of all the work we'd done in Pilates, like she made the corrections in about, 2 sessions, and life was beautiful. And she could take what she'd learned, on the reformer, on the chair, etc., and apply it to standing.
Mhm.
But man, that was such a slap in the face to me in a really good way. It's like
Yeah.
I need to really keep track of what I'm doing and whether it's making a difference. And if it's not, I need to readjust, readapt, and change what I'm doing to make those progressions that I need to make.
Yeah. I call it translation. Does the
Mm.
exercise translate into real life?
Right, which is critical.
It's critical because we forget about that. Uh, Someone once told me that a doctor doesn't care when I call up a doctor and say, Mrs. Jones got better at doing her leg press by 20 pounds. The doctor couldn't care less. Doctor wants to know functionally, can they
Right.
walk farther? Can they do stairs? Can they go up and down
Yes.
stairs without pain? They want those type of things. And once I realized that, I said, oh, do my exercises translate into their activities of daily life? And have I made a difference in those? That translation between the two, because as we've talked about, mat work Pilates, it's fantastic. But as soon as the person stands up, you see a different body all of a sudden. And
You
it can be a really difference.
training is stunningly specific.
Yeah. You get better at
It's
what you
it,
train.
you get better at not just what you train, but exactly what you train.
Right.
Right? I mean, yes, some of it translates and there's things, but if you are doing all your work lying down or supine and prone and seated and whatever on the reformer, you go to stand up. If you haven't done some work standing up, it may not translate
Yeah.
because that's not the position your body was working in. And that was again that the Coraline example was a classic
Yep.
moment of that.
Yeah.
And again, that idea of looking for function. One of the things I find all the time, I assume this happens in personal training, but it happens in Pilates all the time. It becomes very self-referential. Like, oh, well, they're a whole lot better at doing feet in straps. They're a whole lot better at doing prone arm work on the box or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Like, or they're a whole lot better in your world. Oh, they can do 17 more squats or whatever it
Mhm.
is, which is actually a functional exercise, but regardless. But is that translating? Like, so
Yep.
exactly, is that actually making the difference you want to make in terms of them able to move, to dance, to throw things, to play with their kids, whatever they want to do?
Yep. That I can't sort of emphasize enough,
Enough. Mhm.
because I'm working with a client now and she's gotten much better at squats and whatnot, but she has the hardest time getting up and down off the ground.
Mm, right.
That's our next goal. I
Yep.
want her to not have to push off of everything around her and all of this. I want her to be able to just, you know, take a knee forward and then stand up, you know?
Mhm.
So we're
Yep.
literally breaking the process down,
Yep.
quadruped, high kneeling, bring
Yep.
one leg forward, tuck the other toe under so you can use that back leg too, and then push up with both legs to stand up.
Yep.
And it's a process. you know? But if I'm not constantly looking and assessing their movement quality and what she can do on a daily basis of those activities of daily life, well, she can squat, she's doing great. Not as
Yes.
great as like,
Right. Exactly.
so that
That's
was a eye-opening for me,
yep.
you know?
And that so that gets us to looking at assessment, looking at it statically, looking at it dynamically,
Yep.
continually looking at it. So always thinking about it. And then remembering that the point of assessment, I think, is again to create that roadmap, right? To give you a
Mhm.
baseline and to give you a path. And then are we making it forward on that path? And are we getting to that goal we're trying to get to with that client? All those are steps that can be forgotten and are often forgotten, I find, and when I'm working with students and teachers, is they just kind of like, oh yeah, they're looking really good doing their intermediate workout. Right. But every time they stand up, oh, they're still
Yep.
really forward with their head. They still are walking kind of funny. So we're missing a piece there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where the reassessment really comes in and the continual
Mhm.
assessment.
Yes.
The the last thing I wanted to talk about was goal setting
Yep.
because I find that that is incredibly important. And I have 2 goal setting sessions in my assessment. I first do when we're just sitting there, we go through their medical history, and then I ask them, "What are your goals?"
Mhm.
And of course, lose weight, get in shape, get stronger, get more
Whatever.
flexible, balance,
Right.
posture, whatever it is.
Decrease
And
pain.
right.
Yeah.
Usually it's the pain first. Like, I
Yeah.
want my
Yeah.
shoulder not to hurt. Got it. No,
Yes.
sure. You know,
Yes.
but then, I'm like, what else? I want specifics. You want to get back to sports. Great. You want to get on your bike. You want to, be able to get up and down off the ground to play with your grandkids, something tangible. I like tangibility. So I'll throw a couple of those questions at them as well. But then
Yeah.
I'll take them out on the floor and do my assessment. Then when I bring them back in, I say, okay, now we're going to go through goals based on what I just saw.
Yep.
Now, these are mine, and this is what the staff has to look at primarily because I want the
Yep.
staff to know what they want to do. But
Yep.
I'm going to say weak gluteus medius, tight IT band, focus on core stability, core strength, whatever it is, da, 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 and I'll put it in order and I will explain each one to them in as much detail as I need. Here's what I saw based on what we just did. And here's what we're going to work on. And then I blend the two and I say, by doing this, we're going to get you stronger. So you're going to be able to get up and down off the floor. By
Yep.
doing this, we're going to get you. And then they're, oh, okay. So they're not arbitrary. They're not just sitting out in space that, oh, well, he says I need to do this. I guess I got to do that. It's
Right.
okay. Here's where your goal is. Here's where my goal is. And I'm going to draw a line.
Which is absolutely beautifully said. I mean, I don't have anything to add. Absolutely beautifully said. That's exactly right because their goals are often either just I want to get out of pain is often kind of where they start,
Yep.
or and you got to dig to get to the tangibles. I want to be able to ski. I want to be able to lift my
Yep.
grandkids up, whatever it is. I want to
Yep.
be able to sit for longer. Those are key things. And then the other piece is what are your goals in terms of movement? Like what are the movement principles, the fundamental movement things you need to work on or think you need to work on to get to that goal. And I love the fact that you
Yep.
explain that to them so they know there's a path, they know you're thinking about it, which again is the other thing about assessment is if they know you're really paying attention, everything goes better.
Yep. Yep. It also, my mom, who she taught me so much of what I know. She was top personal trainer in Hawaii for so many years. And she always used to say that we want to help them become responsible for themselves
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and not codependent on us, that they don't have
Absolutely.
to be dependent. And for me, when I was a young trainer, it's like, no, I want them to be dependent because I need their
Uh-huh.
money. I need to
Uh-huh.
make money
Y-
here.
Yep.
But the older I've gotten and the more experience I've gotten, I realize, no, I want them to be independent. Even if they are independent, they still need to work with me. It's just I'm putting the responsibility on both of us, me for the guidance, you for the work.
Yep.
And now we're working as a team, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, yes. The other thing too is I found that terrible old adage, if you love something, let it go. If it comes back to you, it's yours. If it wasn't, it never was, which is sort of a terrible thing to say. But with clients,
Mhm.
that is so true.
Sure.
Like if I empower them to go off and do what they want to do and they feel better, like I may or
Mhm.
may not see them again, but I'm going to see their cousin and their aunt and their colleague because I
Sure.
made a difference for them. So whether they stay with me, which they often do because they realize I'm working, it's working,
Yep.
or they refer somebody because they've graduated. Either one is fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's the
Yep.
difference.
Yep. Yep. We did a lot today. We went
Again,
through assessments in great detail. I think let's recap just briefly
mhm,
uh, how we want to start with this. Do your initial watching of them as they walk in. What do
yep,
you see? Just take notes. Something that you said about being a body detective. I love the idea of being a body detective, but you know what? I don't have to have the solutions today. I'm
nope,
just taking in the data,
yep,
you know, get their medical history, go over their goals, then watch them move. Look at their posture, static, dynamic assessment. How does their body work? How does it move? What do we see? And then based on that, we can create our own game plan and our
yep.
own, roadmap.
Our movement goals, if you will, right? Our
Yes,
exercise goals.
exactly. And now I can begin to program for this client.
Right.
So that's what the assessment is, sort of in a nutshell for me.
Yep, absolutely. I love it. And then just remember in another couple months or however long, whatever's the appropriate time frame for that client, reassess. Maybe you go through
Yep.
some of the same exercises that you did on the first day that you haven't been doing every time, right?
Sure.
Or you check a range of motion, or you check their ability to go up onto a step and come back down, or get up and off down off the floor, whatever those things are. And
Yep.
then like, okay, I'm making progress. Great, let's continue on in this direction. Or I reevaluate and I
Yep.
change your goals, right? Your trainer goals. Instead of it's ABC, it's now ABD because C is taken care of, and I got to work on another element of this.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Well, I think we covered that in a good nutshell. And in a couple of months, hopefully,
Yep.
we're going to go over this in great, great, great detail. We're going to have a video series out uh, that will explain all of this. You're going to be able to see actually us working with a model, going through the exercises. What are we seeing? What aren't we seeing? And just comparing bodies and things so we can help you to train your eye a little bit better as to what's necessary to get this client to the next level.
Exactly. We look forward to seeing you on those.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll probably make it a whole series of how do you assess a shoulder and a back and a hip and a knee and other kinds of things,
Yep.
and you can enjoy those soon.
Exactly. Exactly. We're we're at the infancy stages of what we're doing. So that's going to be
We are.
part of it. And that's going to be coming out fairly soon. And we'll keep you updated as we begin to work on all that and get it out on the net. If you do want to get in touch with us or you have a topic you'd love for us to talk about, please do us a favor. Give us an email, movingconvos@gmail.com, or hit us up on our social media, Moving Convos on Instagram, Moving Conversations on Facebook. Those are probably the best places to see us. We also are putting out some anatominis, some little brief exercise bits based on what we talk about here during the podcasts, sort of our podcast video versions that we're going to be putting out a bunch of. We filmed a bunch last week. So we're going to start doling those out here and there as well. And yeah, so for Nora St. John, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.